hope you're ready for a high-energy show today as we talk about a new rule that the DGA just put in place. On top of that, you remember that Mouse Guard movie? That Mouse Guard movie that we tore to shreds recently? Well, director Wes Ball released a demo reel for that movie, and I'll tease my thoughts right up top here. I thought it was incredible. And I'm going to get to talk about that and the DGA news with John Rocha and the one and only Scott Mantz.
Yes!
Bringing the energy
we're going to have a great
set
show on Movie Talk today.
I'm so happy you're here. I'm glad you didn't make another noise that we were talking about before. We will oh, there it was. If you're in the live chat now and you can guess what that was, I'll give you some sort of prize. I hope you can. All right. Story number one today, DGA. We heard that there's a new rule that they put in place. And in case you don't know, DGA is the Directors Guild of America, and they have decided to ban day-and-date releases from eligibility for its top award, which has now been renamed the Outstanding Directorial Achievement in Theatrical Feature Film. So this means that movies from streamers like Netflix or Amazon that are released on streaming the same day they're released in theaters are ineligible for this award. But this rule does not apply to the first-time feature category. So you guys hear this news. My first question for you is, does this even matter?
I feel, yes, in a little small way for certain studios and smaller films. I don't know if it matters necessarily for the films that studios really believe in for awards consideration, because I think they always want to put stuff in the theaters. But you look at something, we were talking off camera about some films on the Amazon side of things. Is that affecting how people go to see a movie or wait for it to be streamed? I don't know. But this day and date stuff, this is the wave of the future. And I think this is kind of like the old guard going, no, we still want you to go to movies. We still want you to do this or that. So they've got to defend their position and where they're at. And on the heels of what Spielberg said a few weeks ago, it kind of makes sense that this is how the old guard of the industry is thinking. But I think it's a small defense against what is an overwhelming progressive movement to change that thought pattern.
Well, I think the old guard does want you to go to the movies, and so does the new guard. Everybody wants you to go to the movies. But really, Perry, the answer to this question is no, it's not going to make a difference. Because really the only studio that this is really affecting is Netflix. The major studios are not releasing Oscar-worthy movies day and date. In fact, the only studio that does, and even they are doing it once in a very, very, very great while when you look at the kind of movies that they have for Oscar contenders. And that studio, I say in quotes, is Netflix. And the movie I'm referring to is Roma. I mean, Amazon has a whole other set of problems because they do not go day and date. But what they do is they have a much shorter window. If an Amazon Studios film plays in theaters, it goes on Amazon Prime to stream in a shorter window. It's about 2 months, whereas the other studios have 3 or even 4 months. The problem with that is a lot of people are looking at the Amazon Studios logo before a trailer, and they're going, you know what, I'll wait. But even though look at how poorly a film like Late Night, which was acquired by Amazon Studios at Sundance for $13 million, made $5 million its opening weekend. It's not doing well. But I really think the answer to this question is no, it's not going to matter, because really the only one affected by this right now is Netflix.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with you on that, except even Netflix bent their rules recently, and the streaming services are going to play ball if they want to be in the Oscar consideration pool this time around. So the only thing, though, about this rule that does kind of bother me a little bit is the thought of, a newer filmmaker out there or an unknown filmmaker out there who just wants to get their movie seen, so they make some sort of agreement that locks them into that. So just for the folks who aren't, let's say, a Martin Scorsese, who have like some weight to swing around, what if they have no choice but to accept a deal like this, and then they are no longer in contention for the big DGA award? But again, that's probably why they didn't change that rule for the first time one.
Well, look at Afonso Carranza's response when they asked him right afterwards, after he won the award for directing. He's like, well, how come this didn't get a long theater release? He goes, well, look, you try to pitch a film about a subsection of the Mexican community with a completely different language and try to get a mass-wide distribution for this. This is what concerns me. This is why I don't like it, because it's this kind of shot across the bow at the streaming services to try to defend their territory. And I think I get why they're doing it. I just don't like it, because whenever you stand in front of progress, you eventually get mowed over. And they're just defending their or old guard, and it just frustrates me because if we can't get out and you're raising the prices on tickets, why can't I stay home and watch an incredible film and have it be nominated for the DGA?
I agree, and I remember, Perri, we've talked about this before in a heated discussion when I think it was you, me, and Jeff on FYC about movies that are about going to see a movie in a theater, which is seriously, I mean, the best way to see a film. But tickets are expensive. You have alternatives, and sure, people have families, and they also have much bigger TVs and great sound systems. Where I bring up Late Night again, I would have enjoyed that movie just as much as at home. But I did see it in the theater. I saw it at Sundance in a theater, and I'll never forget the experience because you can't replicate the shared experience. But it's also very expensive. I see both sides. But
that's the frustrating part of it, is that I can firmly see both sides, because even when we were talking about that recent New York Times article about just the changing landscape and what I see as the closing of opportunities for smaller movies, because basically the box office is dominated by franchises and franchises only. And I think Avengers Endgame, massive success. I'm happy it got it because I think it deserves it, but I think it steamrolled everything that came the next few weeks after it. But there's that problem. But then there's also the part of me that says, a movie is still a movie. And the fact that we have streaming services means we have more variety of content than ever. We have more opportunities for up and coming filmmakers, for diverse storytelling. Yeah. So I don't want to shut that out either. I wish we could just figure out some sort of happy medium. And Neil Varma in the chat is asking right now, so does this mean the Academy will follow with the Oscars? So that's the thing that I was kind of teasing before, is that even if every single guild and every awards organization followed what they're doing right now, I don't think it's going to change anything, because nobody is really restricted by those rules right now anyway.
Well, okay, let's look at Martin Scorsese's The Irishman. Okay, when we were all watching the Academy Awards, we saw that very, very, very much a teaser trailer for The Irishman, where it said De Niro and Scorsese and Joe Pesci and Al Pacino, and it said only on Netflix, and then it said and in theaters.
Yeah.
So what if The Irishman goes day and what if it goes day and date? You're telling me that the DGA is going to ban Martin Scorsese from getting nominated?
It's a good question.
Well, they can't bend the rules for any individual.
Well, that's right.
The other thing I look at you talk about Late Night, right? You go into the theater and it's a failure, right? It's deemed a failure in terms of not making money. This affects whether people look at it for an award or not. Look at First Man. First Man is one of the most incredible films ever made. A lot of us championed that film, wanted it to get nominated for an Academy Award. It couldn't smell an Academy Award. Why? Because it didn't do well in the theater. Well, right, but for Best Picture, it didn't even get looked at or considered in the long run because it didn't do well in the box office. So
that's a good point.
If you could have released that in Netflix, and Netflix releasing the Adam Sandler number of 38 million or whatever, if you could have that story behind your film, then maybe that pushes it into consideration for a Best Picture or Best Director award. So this is the frustrating part of it all for me. And I know y'all can fight back, but this is progress. Move forward with progress instead of resisting the trend. That bothers me, because Perri makes a great point. Smaller independent films, smaller independent directors are going to find it harder and harder to put their films in theaters, and studios finding it harder and harder to put their money behind it as well.
Why I think this doesn't matter right now is because Netflix does have the luxury. If it sees Oscar potential in XYZ movie, they can fund a theatrical release. It's really no big deal. They accommodated the rule last year and they were fine. My bigger concern is just, the itty bitty distributor out there who has a really special gem on their hands. And I know we don't usually see those crack the nominations all that often, but the point is that the opportunity is there, and it's even and it's fair for everybody. So if, let's say, someone out there could only afford a VOD release for a movie, it's I just think we're hitting this point in time where everything needs to be considered equally.
At the same time, though, if a movie is really, really, really that good, then it's going to get picked up by someone a lot bigger than the little itty-bitty distributor you're talking about. It could get picked up by an A24 or Neon.
You would hope so. I'm trying not to point a finger at any smaller distributors out there, but I've seen many of them botch a movie's release, possibly because they didn't have the funds to support it, and it is very, very frustrating to see something that was made in a way that is deserving of these honors and can't get it because they don't have the right funds or team behind it, which is a shame, because then you look at a studio studio like Disney right now. They can throw money at anything they want. They can make as much noise as they want and completely drown out everything else. So you know what? As we make changes to these rules, we should make changes to the money that can go into the campaigns to promote these movies for the Oscars also.
This summer has been so fascinating to watch. You talk about how Avengers Endgame basically streamrolled over the movies that came out in the weeks after. One of those movies was Long Shot, movie which I know you love, with Charlize Theron. I love that movie. I thought it was great. And then you have a movie that came out on Memorial Weekend. Wrong time to release this film, and the wrong strategy to do it wide, which was Booksmart.
Exactly, yeah.
Booksmart by Anna Perrin.
Right.
They blew it with that movie. That should have come out either in August or it should have come out in October as a Select City thing that got platformed. But they wanted to rush it out to capitalize it on the great word of mouth that got out of South by Southwest, and it came back to bite them.
Also, if you take this to a possible logical conclusion, the studios now start to look at money, right? So all these, well, I'm saying, all these, even more so than all these superhero films now, all these things that these artists are complaining about and are hogging up the cinema will be even more in the cinema as less and less movies get theatrical distributions. And then we're going to have to start the groundswell of people going, well, you better nominate Avengers Endgame for a Best Picture Oscar becomes even stronger because you have data to support it versus something small like Booksmart or a Long Shot. You can say, well, no, because it kind of came and went. But now, so they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot with this in a flaccid attempt to stop the streaming services from possibly being considered for awards.
It is so frustrating how there's a silver lining to every single argument we bring up, because you bring up something like Avengers Endgame, and I think about what a movie with success like that can do for the individuals that are a part of it. Because, as someone gets more and more famous, then all of a sudden they can start creating opportunities that weren't there before, either for themselves or for someone else. So we do have those mega blockbusters doing good for the industry too. It's just, I don't know, in every single respect, I just see like this massive sea like departing, and like little indies on one side, big budget movies on the other, and we just need to make sure that there still is opportunity for everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, that's a nice
utopian
point of view, but it's not true.
Who there is not much opportunity for right now? Poor Wes Ball's Mouse Guard. But before we talk about that, I've got some stuff to tell you about, like the Collider Factory feed. It is one of our podcast feed where you can get so much content. We have The Witching Hour, of course, over there. So Apple Podcasts, PodcastOne.com, check those out. Sign up because there is so much good conversation over there. Also, have you seen the new episode of Comic Book Shopping? You need to keep an eye out because Jake Gyllenhaal, there's that. Look at that. Coy talking to Jake Gyllenhaal in honor of Spider-Man Far From Home. It is going to be an epic episode of the show, July 2nd. You got to keep an eye out for it. I know Coy is so excited, and I can't wait to watch it myself.
Oh, no, what a get.
Isn't that cool?
That's awesome.
I was so thrilled when I first heard that. Story number 2 now. We are talking about the Mouse Guard. So Wes Ball, the director of the Maze Runner movies, was all set to make his Mouse Guard movie. And then, of course, we had the Disney-Fox merger happen. And apparently, days before they were set to go into production on the movie, Disney pulled the plug on it. Well, now Wes Ball has taken to the internet, and he decided to share a 9-minute demo reel. And admittedly, I was one of those people a couple weeks ago or whenever this happened, and I was sitting here saying, you were going to spend $170 million on a Mouse Guard movie? What is wrong with you? This should have been like a done deal, not happening. I totally get what Disney did. Then I watched this demo reel, which is completely unfinished, and I couldn't turn it off. There's not even any story in this demo reel, but I was mesmerized to the point that I watched the first round of it, which was mainly imagery, and then you get to watch this. You get to watch the same footage almost all over again with sound effects, and I couldn't take my eyes off of it.
What did you love about it?
I love the world and the style, and I love the camera movements that he did. There's something about the way he maneuvers around that world that feels like so natural, and it almost it entices you to want more, to take that extra step and see a new creature, follow these characters around even further. And there's like one fight sequence in it that was so impressive, and I was surprised how suspenseful it felt without any dialogue or me not even knowing much about the characters.
Here's the thing. So up until this breaking news that they pulled the plug on Mouse Guard, and now there's all this great footage. That was not on my list of movies to see. and to spend $170 million, that just would make me think like, who the hell greenlit that? But watching the footage, I agree with you. The footage looked amazing. It looked like Lord of the Rings with mice. I know that's a very simplistic
Funny you
way
say
of
that,
looking at
because
it.
Micah wrote Mouse Guard could have been Lord of the Rings meets Stuart Little.
Oh, there you go. Well,
you guys are on the same page.
Absolutely. But here's the problem is that watching the footage, it looked really, really great. But would that footage, would the film itself have gained enough of a following? Was there enough awareness for Mouse Guard? I mean, I know it's based on a graphic novel series, but would there have been enough awareness to justify that $170 million price tag? I don't know. Maybe that's what Disney got nervous about and pulled the plug.
There is no denying that it's a risk, but having seen this little bit of content, I suspect it might have been a risk worth taking. Also, can't you reassess that production budget? Can't you look at that and try to figure out a way to save some money? That, like, a balance of the two seems like a worthwhile path to have taken.
What do you think,
Yeah,
Rocha?
maybe. I think that would be real. I don't feel like they go in wanting to throw good money after bad. So I hear your point, Perri, and I wonder if they did do that and didn't realize or didn't see that there was a way to do it and bring the costs down. Because you look at that other video that accompanied that 2-minute video he posted, all those desks
I know.
that had people at them building this was really incredible. And yes, I agree. 9 minutes of incredible footage, both with music and without, to give you a vibe of what you'd see was fantastic. Really got you into this world. But what's the story? What's the acting? The Maze Runner films,
Hey.
people are in the side, people are not on their side. So would Wes have really landed this plane? We don't know. At $170 million, that's a hell of a thing when you look at Mortal Engines, when you look at Valerian, when you look at these things that were well known within the groups that knew them, but not to the general public. Is that a chance you wanted to take in the end? But this is also a brilliant move by Wes, because it's very reminiscent of Tim Miller and Ryan Reynolds releasing that Deadpool footage. So this could be his way of going like, if there's anyone out here who wants to take a chance on this footage, this is how damn good it was.
Here's the difference.
It's a smart move by Wes.
First of all, Deadpool was a comic book character from Marvel, not part of the MCU.
Yeah,
Hang on,
but hardly anybody knew in the mainstream.
Well, I knew who he was.
Right,
I knew who
well,
Deadpool was.
yeah.
But
We're
also
in the
have
business,
Ryan
though.
Reynolds. Ryan Reynolds is a very, very well-known actor. And, you got the voices here of Idris Elba and
Thomas Brody Sangster and Andy Serkis.
Andy Serkis is the other
Mm-hmm.
one. But are they big enough to pull people in? Is the
I don't
concept
know.
big enough to pull people in? This is a very expensive looking movie.
That's the thing.
And, sure, Disney has money to spend, they have money to burn, especially after all those layoffs, and especially after Avengers. But I just still think that even though the footage looks really good, I don't blame them for pulling the plug.
I don't entirely blame them either. It's just unfortunate when I watch that and I say to myself, after having been on like the opposite side so like seriously before, that I still would have wanted to watch that. But jumping off what you were saying about Deadpool, Rocha, and actually we have a question from PJ in the chat. He's asking, will Netflix or Amazon pick up Mouse Guard?
No.
So is there any chance that this could have the Deadpool effect where the material is out there now and
Goes on
somebody
Disney
else
Plus.
snatches it up? Well, then they still have to finance
Yeah,
it.
right, yeah.
They still have to finance it. And also, back when we got the word that Disney was dropping it, they had said that, I believe it was Deadline that had the exclusive, that they gave them permission to shop it around. And I believe at the time Netflix and Paramount were part of that conversation, maybe trying to snatch it
That's
up.
funny.
The thing is, having released this demo reel and showing an empty office, I mean, does that mean it's over and has no chance?
I see Sony picking up something like this. Sony Animation, the way they broke a whole lot of ground with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah. Great point.
They would actually be a good fit for something like this if they went down that road.
But do you read this as Wes Ball, like one last ditch effort to get it
absolutely.
another
Oh,
home,
yeah.
Absolutely.
or him and his team knowing it's a done deal, it's not going to happen anymore, and being like, hey, I'm just going to show you everything
No,
now.
I think it's the former.
Yeah,
I
think they're
hope
trying
you're
to-
right.
I think
I
he
hope
played
you're
it
right.
perfectly, and also the apology that followed his tweet Sorry to everyone involved in this. Sorry I couldn't land the plane. It's a very smart move all around PR-wise as well to kind of come in as a humble director who really cared about this project. So that's going to speak volumes. I don't know if it'll get picked up because that price tag is a lot.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if, as much as Netflix wants to throw money around, I don't know they'd want to do it with this.
It's very high, but looking like, especially, I maybe you're not a big fan of the Maze Runner movies, but especially when you look at the very first one, to see what Wes, and especially when that was his first feature, that guy knows visual effects. When you see what he can do for a certain amount of money, I'm not saying that it's $170 million for a Mouse Guard movie is money well spent, but he could make a lot with not so much. So if someone pared that budget down for him, maybe it would have potential. All right, let's hit the live chat briefly and take a question from J. Scott For Real, who's asking, what genres outside of psychological horror / thriller should Ari Aster take on next? Especially as someone who was rattled a little by Midsommar.
A little. Okay, I am not exaggerating when I say that Midsommar was the most unnerving, disturbing movie I ever seen. And I say that, I'm not just, it's whatever, just to sort of throw out the clicheist of ever seen. But I got home that night and I couldn't sleep. I woke up the next morning. I was still in a funk, because it was so unnerving and disturbing, and I say that it was even more disturbing than Hereditary. And he certainly is, creating a genre unto himself, because it's not really a horror movie, but it's a whole lot more than a psychological thriller. So what does he do next? I think he should direct a comic book movie.
Your Midsommar is my Martyrs. But the cool thing about this question, having seen Midsommar, is I also found, Midsommar is definitely very, very eerie and unsettling, but it also had much more comedy than I ever would have expected. And also just visually, it's so drastically different than Hereditary, which makes me think that he can probably do just about anything. He just seems like the kind of filmmaker that can go any direction as long as there's a deep passion and understanding for the message he's trying to achieve.
I think a Fast and the Furious movie, maybe.
Oh my God!
Maybe not that.
No, but here's what I think. I think it's certainly possible. I think it'd be interesting to see his take on a Western. And I say this because of the visual aspects of the genre. Like, you look at Sisters Brothers, you look at The Proposition. These are really interesting, out there Westerns. Even McCabe and Mrs. Miller from the 70s, really pushing the genre out there into the outer bounds. And I would love to see what Ari's view of something like that would be. Maybe there's an otherworldly element to it, or some kind of strange element to it that you can explore that you wouldn't have thought. But the West, where it's hot and it's dusty and it's dirty and weird stuff's always around the corner, you never know if you're going to live or die from one day to the next, would be very interesting. Even throw in Deadwood as a possible interesting exploration of the genre as well.
When I say doing a comic book movie, I don't see Ari Aster doing a Spider-Man movie or an MCU movie, but I do see him doing a movie. Can you imagine if Watchmen, the 2009 movie, had been directed by Ari Aster? I mean, it's such deep, dense material to begin with such massively flawed, complex characters, and I think that sort of plays into just the complexities of these two movies that he's directed.
That's an interesting thought.
The Max would be another one. The Max from Image would be another one, which people remember from MTV animated stuff.
What do you think, Perry?
I think he can do, I think he can do anything. Anything that I'm not picking any genre, because I want to leave that door wide open for him, because I really do think that, given what I saw in Midsommar, he could take a step in a drastically unexpected direction. And as long as the passion for the story is there, I think he can knock it out of the park.
He should do a romantic comedy with Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan. There you go.
That would be fascinating.
Fascinating.
Let's take one quick question before we take off. How about, all right, you'll enjoy this, Mantz. This one from Micah is, if you had your own award show, what will you call it? I feel like you've actually thought about this.
Oh, the movie Mantz Awards?
Oh,
come on.
That works.
The movie Mantz Awards, best performance by a Beatle in a motion picture,
I feel like
best Star Trek movie.
What's the word for a sound effect? When you want to make us, not a Foley. I feel like it should just be an excited sound. It shouldn't be a word. It should just be the Mantz yell.
Oh my God awards.
Something like that. Yeah.
Oh my God.
There you go.
The winner of the Oh my That award goes to Johnny Rocha.
It won't be a day-and-date release, though. No day-and-date releases in this award show. What am I going to say? The Outlaw Nation Awards. That's what it should be done.
makes sense.
End of conversation for me, yeah.
I feel like mine can only be something Dewey related. Like,
The
I don't
Perri
think Dewey
Normal
does movies.
Activity Awards.
Well, there you go. I'll go with that because then it could be all genre
There you
awards.
go.
Because genre movies do not get enough love at the Oscars. I don't care how
No,
many
they
times
don't.
we've had that conversation. I'm going to keep having it until they change something.
Fair enough.
Few
Or
and
change
far
things
between.
more.
I mean, Get Out, Silence of
Yeah.
the Lambs, but what else?
Let's go. Chip
Exorcist.
away at that a little
There you
faster,
go.
please.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. We are done today. Rocha, Mantz, thank you guys so much for
Thank
being here. This was a blast.
Always.
Adam in the booth, thanks for your help. Dorian in the live chat. Guys, please like and share this episode of Movie Talk and tell everybody you know about us on the YouTube channel and in podcast form as well. And then don't forget, tune back in tomorrow, 3 p.m. PT Live for a new episode.